Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of the Long Weekend of Literatures 2021. Let's begin with the first panel discussion for today, Books Beyond Borders, with Kannan Sundaram, Vasudhendra, Christine Cornet from France, Dr. Oscar Pujol from Spain, in conversation with Neeta Gupta, and brought to you by Publishers Exchange. I will now pass the mic to Neeta, who will go ahead and introduce the panel and begin this discussion. Hello, Neeta. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Yoshita, for this wonderful invite to be a part of the Long Weekend of Literature. I'm Neeta Gupta for the audiences. I'm the co-founder of the Publishers Exchange, which is a very informal collective of Indian language publishers. And we are delighted to be here bringing this session to you on Books Beyond Borders. So the aim of this panel is to represent the bibliodiversity of Indian and European languages from a publishing perspective. We hope to showcase the rich shared multilingualism and the culture of translation through a panel of speakers, which includes writers, publishers from India, as well as directors from the French Book Office and the Institute of Cervantes, New Delhi. So we have with us today Kannan Sundaram. He's a Tamil publisher at Kalachuvadu Publications. Kalachuvadu was awarded the Best Publisher Award by Publishing Next and the Romerola Prize for Best Translation from French to an Indian language in the year 2018. And, I just want to mention this here. They're celebrating 25 years of publishing in this wonderful, as we speak. So huge welcome to Kannan Sundaram. We have also with us Vasudhendra, who's a Kannada writer, who's known for his short stories, in fact, and personal essays. And this is a special time to be celebrating short stories because, as we saw, one of our Jayant Kaikani's short stories won the International Translation Award, the National Translation Award in the US. And I think it's a huge, sort of pat in the back for short story writing, which had been seeing a sort of, a lot of publishing was avoiding or sort of sidestepping short stories. So I think this is a huge time to celebrate short stories. And Vasudhendra, in fact, is one of the first openly gay literateurs from Kannada. And his most critically acclaimed book, Mohana Swami, which was translated into several Indian languages, including English, made a very big impact at the time that it was published. So besides being a dynamic voice as a writer, he's also very highly regarded as a publisher at Chanda Pustaka. So welcome, Vasudhendra, to this wonderful session this afternoon. We have with us Christine Cornet, who I think everyone here knows so well because she's one of the most sensitive attachés for books and ideas at the French Institute of India. She's been a champion almost for publishing, for translations, for, she's constantly hosting wonderful workshops and mentoring sessions for publishers from both France and India. And I think it's an absolute honor to have Christine join this panel. And finally, we have Dr. Oscar Pujol, the founding director of Instituto Cervantes, New Delhi. Dr. Pujol is a Catalan scholar and an author. And I propose to open this conversation with Dr. Oscar Pujol today, as he's also one of the hosts for this year's Long Weekend of Literature. So Oscar, I'm posing this question to you. What, according to you, is the aim of an event like this one, which allows writers from Europe to share their ideas and their words with audiences across the world? I mean, today, as we go digital, it's really across the world people can listen to these sessions. And also, as an author and someone who works closely with writers and translators, it would be fascinating to get your perspective on the history of reading, writing, translation, publishing, especially in the context of the modern day push towards the digital format and changing reading patterns in the youth. So over to Oscar Pujol. I think you can turn on your mic and take this.
Oh, thanks, Neeta. It's really a delight for me to be here and be part also of this panel. I am not a publisher, obviously, as you say, but First of all, as president of EUNIC, I would like to say that the long weekend of literature is here actually to the long night of literature, which was running in its 5th edition before the pandemic set in. And it was a kind of meeting that allowed the audience to connect in an almost intimate way with European writers from different countries and writing in different languages. So for us, first thing, it is very important to show the diversity of language, cultures, and visions that form the rich tapestry of Europe. And I would like to say, that if long weekend of literature stands for something, I would like to underline like 3 things. First is that diversity. Secondly is intimacy between the writer and the reader. And finally is literary quality. Well, speaking of diversity, I always, when speaking India and in a European setting also, I think that diversity of language, cultures, and visions that we have in Europe, it's very well mirrored in India. It's really, I think no other perhaps space in the world has so many diversity. I think Europe has like 24 official languages, and I think India more or less has the same. Not long time ago, I was at the Sahitya Academy's award ceremony for 20,000. And it's really incredible to see there 24 writers in 24 different languages being awarded literary prizes. No, I think nowhere in the world are you going to see such a thing. And it's a pity, I think, because in Europe so far, we still don't have a single festival awarding all European languages in the different languages. No, so I would say so much for diversity. Here, Europe and India really twine souls, and nowhere in the world we have, as I said, this kind of richness in languages and literature. Well, for intimacy, I would like to say that a long weekend of literatures is whispering to the ear of the audience, no? And it's good, if the people participating are able to ask questions to the writer. I think for a reader, and as myself as a reader, it's always very intriguing how the writer, who we can say that in a sense is also a magician, is able to create the magical world of a literary piece, and how the writer understands its own work. So we want that the audience, is able to ask these questions, the creative process and the understanding. And I think the literary weekend, long weekend of literature provides this. No? And finally, I would say about literary quality. I think all of us are beginning to feel that we live in very confusing times. And living in confusing times, I think literature is more important than ever. First, because literature gives voice to our perplexity. Second, it gives solace to our wounded souls. And finally, also raises a voice of dissent. And literature, and it is a kind of dissent which is not, I would say, fanatical and destructive, like it happens often in politics everywhere, but a kind of dissent that flies in the 2 wings of freedom and imagination. That's the power of literature. Well, regarding the second question, and I don't know how much time I have, because it's a complex one, but it's a really very interesting one, because I think that we are not only living in a confusing time, but a fascinating one, because we have the privilege to see a change of paradigm in a very short span of time. In fact, many people are saying that we are in what is being called the post-Gutenberg era, which shows to me similarities with the arrival of the printing press at the beginning of the Gutenberg era more than 500 years ago. I remember that someone called the printing press a machine for falsifying manuscripts. And the machine for falsifying manuscripts invented a new artifact, which is this one, you recognize it, the book, as revolutionary, if not more, than this other one, which is the smartphone. The book changed our way of reading, from reading a manuscript aloud for a number of people to silent and solitary reading. I would say from communal reading aloud to individual silent reading in a solitary confinement. No? Now, these days, reading has become like a very transcendental activity, highly valued activity that brings a kind of cultural distinction. We complain that young people doesn't read anymore, but we have forgotten what was said at the time when the book was really, especially in the 16th century, and even as late as the 18th century, about the dangers of silent and solitary reading. It was considered a compulsive and dangerous way of reading that created depression, nervous breakdown, and melancholia. And I would like to say that Don Quixote is the quintessential example of that. You remember, in the first chapter of the Quixote, he's described as a person, that gave himself up to reading books of chivalry with such eagerness that he completely neglected the management of his own property. He once sold many acres of land to buy books and brought home as many of them as he could get. And the Quixote says, in short, he became so absorbed in books that he spent his night from sunset to sunrise and his days from dawn to dark reading over them. And I quote literally, with little sleep and much reading, his brains got so dry that he lost his wits. I think it's very interesting, So Don Quixote, in a sense, was the first addicted to compulsive reading, in the same way that today we see digital addicts spending hours at their computers and smartphones. I would like to remember also what happened with the sentimental novel in England in the 18th century, when books like Pamela were such a success. And you have a lot of literature describing what dangerous activity is for young women to read in the solitude of their rooms. So they are very, very interesting similarities, which we could ponder. In fact, we say now that the invention of the printed book paved the way for the modern novel, which the first example, and it's not a casualty, is Don Quixote of the modern novel. No? And Don Quixote was not possible without, the reading. I would like to remember that, although it's an expression which I don't like much, but the first really cultural industry was the publication of books of chivalry during the 16th century in Spain. There were more than 80,000 books published, for a population of 10 million people. It became so popular, they even carried to the Americans, all these novels. They put names of American places like California, for instance, which is the name of a mythical island in a chivalry book, when they go there. Right. No? So it was really something incredible. No? And well, I will be finishing, if you want, and with just saying one thing, I think that we are reading animals. And as we have a language instinct, we also have a reading instinct. And I would like to say, and this is and even at the risk of getting it wrong, that I think that the physical book, the printed book, will remain in spite of all these digital artifacts, I think that the book will be like the radio, which has never gone out of sight, even having videos and so many. And the wonder of a printed newspaper, even the printed book, will remain there. No, I remember one day, trying to read the newspaper in my smartphone. It came to my mind a kind of a small argument for a little tale. Imagine the future. We have completely forgotten that they were books. Books have disappeared off the planet Earth. We have only digital screens, and somebody comes with a bright idea, of inventing paper and printing a newspaper and they see such a relief, getting out of the digital screens and being able to browse your news, with the easiness of a printed paper, that I am sure that would be a rediscovery. So I do really think that the book is there to remain, even if all these changes are taking place there.
Thank you, Oscar. That was very insightful, and I love the historical perspective you gave to reading and as an addiction. So thank you very much for that. And coming to Kannan, as one of the most dynamic publishers in India, Kannan, you've been very successful in carrying a number of Indian voices to international readers via translation. Could you tell us your point of view, when it comes to the fact that a whole lot of fiction travels across borders quite easily, but it's not the same case when it comes to non-fiction writing from South Asia to travel across borders via translation as easily. So could you speak a little about that? Because I know you have a very strong point of view on critical essays and thoughts and philosophy, or so should I request? Can I request Kannan to please sort of address that issue? Kannan.
And thank you for inviting me to this event. So yes, not just geographical regions, but also these barriers exist across languages. I'll come to that later. But when it comes to books traveling from Southeast Asia to the rest of the world, maybe to even other parts of Asia or to Europe, I think it is easier for us to sell rights to a book that speaks of, like a memoir or an autobiography or a fiction that speaks of experience of people from the marginal thing, for example, than to sell a piece of literary criticism or ideas or philosophy to other parts of the world. So the non-fiction part is much more difficult, and it is relatively easier to sell a piece of fiction to other places. Even within India, if you see that, between Indian English and the Indian languages, the books of ideas always travel from English to the Indian languages, and very rarely do they travel the other way around. What travels from the Indian languages to English is again fiction, memoirs, autobiography, experiences. That's the kind of hierarchy that exists there. So I think we have to work from both sides to cross this. The first part is being aware that these hierarchies exist and there are these glass barriers that need to be broken. And then from our side, we have to make an effort to present the best of our thinkers and ideas to the world. And I think from the other side, from the European side or from the Asian nations, they have to make an effort to, special effort to also look at not just fiction, but also books of ideas from other parts of the world, so that we can enrich each other, not from just an experience, but also from our ideas.
Thank you, Kannan. There's a lot to think about in what you said, and I think these are things that we can all take forward in various other discussions when we meet. Coming to you, Christine, the French Book Office, in fact, is one of the most unique experiments by the French government, creating a platform to showcase literature from France across the world. And especially coming from you, how easily would you say books travel across borders? Because like I mentioned, you work so closely with publishers and translators, and you're constantly creating opportunities for participating in learning from each other. So what has been your learning in the last few years in India about these journeys that books make to different countries, to different languages, to different geographies? Over to you, Christine.
Thank you so much, Neeta, and thank you all of you for this wonderful panel. Thank you, Oscar, for accepting to have this publishers panel and the attaché of the book office, the chef of the book office. It's really a privilege to be attaché for books, ideas, and debates. Can you imagine the privilege when you are in India, when you are in a multilingual country? It's just a huge challenge. So yes, the French Book Office is a unique experiment by the French government. Maybe in the diplomatic network, we have 5 book offices. And but the specificities of the book office in India It's really to play a leading role between authors, translators, and publishers. This is why we develop different tools. You see the Romain Rolland book prize, and yes, Kalachuvadu, Kannan for the translation of I don't remember, Modiano. No, it was not Modia. It was Modiano.
Modiano was for Hindi, yeah.
Yeah, it was for Hindi. But so we create different tools, like the Romain Rolland translation book prize, but we also have the BAPTAGOR, which is a financial supporting program for Indian publishers in all Indian languages to support the translation from French into Indian languages. And I'm very pleased that Vasu, you are here, because we have the project of translating Persepolis in Kannada. This is the first time that we have this kind of challenge. I'm very, very happy to contribute to this translation. Most of the time, these last 5 years, where I arrived 3 years and a half already, and every year we support almost 30 titles, okay, 30 titles, French titles into Indian languages. So when I arrived more than 3 years ago, I mean, since I arrived, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about the Indian publishing market, the richness of languages and cultures. And it's why we don't want to translate only from French title into English. English, of course, is important, but we really have, in my opinion, we have to focus on this richness of languages all over India. That's the most very important. And respecting the languages, it's also respecting the different cultures in the subcontinent. So this is very important. And languages are defined in the Indian language publishing and translation, are now becoming an important part of publishing. So the difficulty for us is to understand how it works. We don't have an Indian publishing market. We have Indian publishing markets with an S and a big S. And if you don't understand that, you just follow the wave of translating in English. But it's not enough. So it's why even during the pandemic, of course, interrupted or postponed several events, of course. But in the same way, the situation obliged us to get out of our comfort zone. So even if it was not comfortable at all before, but what I want to say is we developed during this pandemic, unfortunately online, but we hope that we will organize residencies in the coming months. We organized translators factories. We began with a Malayalam. So the objective was to try to identify a new generation of young Indian translators from French into Indian languages. We started with Malayalam, then Hindi, then Tamil, and next year we want to do the Bengali, Marathi, Bengali and Marathi. And in doing these translators factories, we identify for every language 5-6 persons, but very motivated, even if it was workshop behind the screen, but they all choose one French title, and they worked together during 9 months. And as a result, we identify a new generation. And we want also to identify new publishing house in Indian languages. And after these translators factories, we would love to organize in Kerala, in Tamil Nadu, according to every Indian languages, a residency to put them all together, because they know each other, but behind the screen. So I think it will be a really a good opportunity for them and for all the segment of the publishing industry. So you ask me, how easily do books travel across border? It's not so easy. And, very often my boss asks me, so this year, how many copies we have of one French title? And I always said, it's not a question of copies, of number of copies. It's a question of to be present in the market and to have a good quality of translation. Even if you publish only 1,000 copies, doesn't matter. If the translation is good, it's a very long process to be present in these huge markets with an S.
Thank you, Christine. In fact, I must mention also the study that you, the French, before the Paris Salon du Livre, you did a wonderful study on the Indian language publishing industry. And I think that is unique, because I think even in India, it's been absolutely very difficult to really put numbers and figures together. So kudos to the French Book Office for carrying out such a comprehensive study, and thank you for your wonderful sharing of all the wonderful activities that the Books and Ideas and Debates Office and you as the attaché. Congratulations on all the work. So I come to my dear friend Vasudhendra, Vasu, who we've become friends over the last year and a half, and he's been such an inspiring and wonderful person to meet and talk to over Zoom. We haven't really met ever in person, but over Zoom I've come to know him as a friend, and I count him as a friend. So Vasu, when you first published Mohanaswamy, and it then got translated into English and other Indian languages because of its immense popularity, what were the challenges that you faced as a writer and a publisher representing diversity and battling rigid social borders? Because I know it takes a lot of guts to stand up and share your experiences and to give voice to something which is, issues which are socially stigmatized, because your writing is mainly short stories and personal essays. And I think, it would be wonderful to hear from you, because what were the challenges? Essentially, what I mean to say is, how did you cross the social borders? Here we're looking at, crossing borders, since the whole session is about beyond borders. So how did you cross that social border?
Thank you very much, Neeta, for that wonderful introduction. Yeah, in fact, I thought when I wrote this Mohanaswamy, it was very honest storytelling about my personal experience, half of my personal experience, and totally a gay life in rural India as well as in urban India. So the difference, what it made actually, was it was written and published in a vernacular language. Till then, it doesn't mean that gay literature was not there in India, but it was all completely in English and urban upper class. That's how the gay was treated. In fact, most of them used to think that it is gay, anything LGBT means it's upper class urban lifestyle, you know. So that's the kind of a feeling which was there. So that made a difference. I'm so lucky that one challenge I didn't had is I did not have to search for a publisher, because I myself is a publisher. I took courage and I just published it. But you should see the day on which I published. It's on the 11th December 2013. Without my knowledge, on that day, Supreme Court of India ruled back the Delhi High Court judgment, saying that it going to retain the 377 Article 377, which calls all the LGBT people as criminals. That's the day it was published. And I got so scared. In fact, I asked, like, what is going to happen? So my friend told me, LGBT community friend, he told, don't worry, even if they take you to the jail, there will be lot many gay members in the jail. So you'll have a better life there. So you don't have to really worry about going to a jail. Okay. So that's what it was. But the thing is, you can see the overall society was disturbed, because I have already written almost 12 books and this was my 13th book. So I'm quite a popular writer here and my book sells well. So everyone knows me. But popular media means all the major media, digital, print and everything, they kept silent. So they didn't want to talk about this book at all. If it's any other book which had been published by me, written by me, there would have been so many articles floating in the print media. But this book, when it came, everyone kept silent. Nobody knows how to respond to this book. Okay. So I was, okay, I felt it's fine. So no problem. No one is talking about the book. But you know, something else happened. Generally, in vernacular language book publishing, we give the details of the author, contact details of the author and his phone number, everything will be there because we're not very big. So we take the risk of providing their contact details. Then I started getting phone calls from the remote parts of Karnataka, because there is a big community, LGBT community, especially the gay community, who has never read anything like this in their life. Till then, it was only the homophobic journalism or homophobic fiction writing on the gay community was there. Now they were shocked. They had never read English, so they don't know how to read English. They can read only Kannada, so our language, our vernacular language here. So they started calling and telling me that this is the story of me. So means their own story. You have written about me. So they started celebrating. They started crying over the phone. And many of them came all the way from 300 kilometers to meet me, just to meet me and thank me that you wrote something about us. You know, that was never expected. I never expected such kind of a support from the gay community. They have never disclosed to anyone, but they were ready to disclose with me because they have been assured now that I'm also a gay man, so they don't have to worry about it. So that was fantastic, actually. And it has seen so many reprints now in Canada. It has gone so many reprints. So what happened was something interesting thing was we have social media now. Yes, the print media was hesitant to publish anything about the book. The digital media was hesitant to publish anything, the TV and other channels. But there were social media which was open. So people started writing about the book on Facebook, Instagram, everywhere. So they started expressing that it's something which is very new for us, and they started celebrating. Believe me, very interestingly, the women readers were the first to express joy over the book. And many women said that your story is almost resembles my story. You know, as a woman, what I have faced in this society, I feel this Mohanaswamy, the protagonist, is facing the same kind of a challenges in his life. So that's how it happened actually. So that's where the difference came, I feel, because it was published in the vernacular language. Afterwards, it got published in English. English is like a highway. Once it comes in highway, all other small routes will start observing that vehicle, so all Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, till then they had not observed this book, but now once it came in English and became popular, so it opened the avenue for them. So for English, it was more of an intellectual discussion. English was celebrated it and they discussed about it and all, but it was more of a intellectual level. But when it went to Telugu, when it went to Tamil, I started getting calls from there also. So because I can speak Telugu very well, so Telugu readers started interacting with me. Malayalam readers started sending me friend requests and sharing messages with me. So that is like, it's like started bringing the entire Indian community. So we could cross our own borders. It's not even international borders. To cross the borders within India itself, from one state to another state, this English translation helped me. And later on, it went to Spain also. It's in Spain, they published this book. There also, it was well received. But I can say the honest narration of the book made the LGBT community to rejoice, saying that this story is our story as well. That was the difference, and more such things should happen. And the best part is, after my book's success, many started writing LGBT themed novels and short stories in Kannada. Lesbian stories came. Transgender communities, autobiographies started getting published. And everywhere, wherever we go to the literature seminars, once upon a time, it was a taboo. The subject was such a taboo subject. Now, all were ready to discuss openly about that subject. That was a change. And personal change is, after this book got launched, all my fans, readers, the friends and all, they started telling me that now we see a better smile on your face. And now we see you more beautiful than what you were before. And that was the biggest compliment for me in this journey of publishing Mohanaswamy. Thanks, Neeta.
Thank you. Thank you, Vasu, for those very inspiring words. I mean, I think this is something which touches us all. So, before we move on and open up the panel for questions and answers from the audience, I'll check back with them. But I'd just like all of you to make a kind of a closing statement on how we can translate some of these creative conversations and dialogues, like the Long Weekend of Literature, into the actual publishing, the business of publishing. So I'm going to open with Kannan. Kannan, would you like to address how to convert, all this creative energy that is being generated here through these readings over the weekend, how we as publishers can look and, take it and give it a space for the actual publishing of books. Kannan, over to you.
Yeah, so, as a publisher, my response to events like this, panels or, literary festivals, and the experience of participating in them and what I take away from there as a publisher is, I think it has become very essential part of one of my passions, that is the rights trade, to bring the best of world literature, new languages, new regions into Tamil, and also take Tamil writing to the world. When it comes to that, I think it is in these kind of festivals that you learn about new writers, new books, new languages, you develop contact with other publishing professionals across the world. And all this comes to play after the event, when you want to get down to the business of selling or buying rights. Then you can use all this knowledge, all these contacts, all this information that you have received, these discussions, being enlightened by them, like in today's discussion, which was, I think, I personally found very enlightening. So you get ideas. You get ideas, and then you make points, and then you make notes, and then after the panels, you start developing your ideas and start using them for your own publishing industry. And I think it is through these panels that these sessions, these festivals, that there is a certain readership created with a thirst for other language writing, which encourages the travel of books across the world.
Thank you, Kannan. I think that's very true. And for instance, I think a lot of the European writers, and when these festivals used to be the long night of literature, and we used to have the writers in Delhi or in some city where they were reading, it gave us an opportunity to also actually then catch up with them for a coffee or a glass of wine at the end of the day. And it was a very wonderful opportunity to open up conversations with and possibly actually do informal rights buying, or just at venues and sessions. So I'd like to request Christine, would you like to come in and say something here on how we can translate these creative conversations into the actual business of publishing?
Yeah, thank you, Neeta. Yeah, I wanted to say that during this long week of literature, we the French embassy, the French Institute in India, invited Tiffany Tavernier. She is in conversation in parallel to this panel, and I'm very happy because she's already translated in English by Siegel Books, but she will be also she will come to Delhi in next January for the New Delhi World Book Fair. So I wanted to say that, as I said before, it's a long process. Even if you introduce one French author, you have to think not only translated her or him in English, but then it's in English, so it's accessible, and maybe you can promote her works in Bengali or in Tamil or in Kannada. So I think it's really important because of the segmentation of the market and the translation market into languages, how to cross from Tamil to Bengali. So if the same French writer is translated in Tamil, then in Bengali, so he's present in all over India. And so we will, the French Institute in India will invite almost 20 French writers, because France is a guest country of honor at New Delhi World Book Fair. And they don't stay only in Delhi, they will go in our 14 Alliance Française. So this is also an opportunity to meet you, publisher of Indian languages.
Wonderful, wonderful. In fact, at the Publishers Exchange, one of the ideas that we've been trying to work with is to, as a cluster, of Indian language publishers, to try and buy rights together, which is, so suppose it's, a French author, and suppose 6 or 8 languages, publishers from 6 or 8 languages were to buy the rights together. This is something that we're looking to. I'm sure these are conversations we will take far beyond just this platform, which is more to showcase the wonderful, work that's happening behind the scenes of the writing and the authors and the reading that you see. This is all the, the background work that we are doing, providing, facilitating. So Vasu, would you like to say something? Because I'd like to close the conversation with Oscar being our host today. So Vasu, would you like to talk about translation and how to translate?
Yeah, just 1 minute I'll take on thing which I can see here is each of us have a unique knowledge repository, unique experience and unique culture and unique books. And we need to exchange a lot, like quite a lot of things are there, which we are not aware, which we can exchange and make use of it. So for that, more meeting and understanding each one's strengths and knowledge repository is important. And second thing is we are always dependent on the English bridge. So, to cross between 2 borders, we're always depending on the English bridge. We need to try to see if we can avoid that English bridge and directly walk between the 2 borders, which is very essential, and we should look from that perspective.
I think that's a brilliant, brilliant idea. And I think that is happening in a number of European and Indian languages, that is happening directly. I would say, especially when we look at French or Spanish, it is, and German as well. I think the German Book Office and the Max Muller Bhavan have made, a lot of efforts in ensuring that you have direct translations coming from these languages into Indian languages. So I think that is one of the things that is, we are special in India for having that relationship with Europe. So before we move on, I'd like to take this question to Oscar for his, words on, how do you think we can use the energy of these creative conversations to actually bring more books and share more books with each other?
Thanks, Neeta. Really delighted to take part of this conversation. And just to pick up, what Vasu was saying, how to get over the bridge of the English language. I've been delighted to know that your book has been translated into Spanish, really. That's wonderful to know. And as Christine was also saying, also, and you should consider that the Spanish language is a newcomer in the Indian subcontinent. Both French and even German had a longer, but the coming of Spanish has been quite spectacular. And as Christine was saying, we are also identifying a new generation of Indian translators that for the first time they can translate works into Indian languages, not only Hindi and Bengali, which there was already a tradition of more than about 30 years, but especially Marathi and Malayalam. And I hope in future time also in Tamil and in Kannada. No? There is a project of translating again Garcia Marquez, which was a big success in Kerala, straight from Spanish into Malayalam. No? So those are, I think, good news. And Long Weekend of Literature, it's a reminder of that diversity. So we are also working on that and preparing a new generation of Indian translators, no, from Spanish into the different Indian languages. Not only from Spanish. I mean, Neeta herself published a book from Catalan into Hindi, which was directly translated. I think that was a great achievement that you did, because a very small language, but being translated without the bridge either of Spanish or English, it was a great achievement. Finally, I said that the Embassy of Spain has also been in conversation with Penguin to publish already the stock of Spanish literature that they have to be published in Spanish here in India, catering to a future, readership in Spanish. And maybe use India as a platform to distribute those Spanish books through other countries of Asia. So I think things are moving. They are really moving, no? And really delighted to see, all these publishers in what is called regional languages, which are so full of life.
Which we now call Indian languages.
Yeah, I think that's better. Call Indian languages. And no language is small, I always say that. No?
So I have some questions here from Jyotsana Narsimhan. I was just maybe, I think Vasu, maybe you could attempt this, or maybe somebody. See, Jyotsana says, often there are people who are binary talking for or on or about non-binaries, though the intention is to lend a voice or to support their counterpart from across spectrums. Does this create an issue when it comes to publishing? This is open to everyone. Anybody who'd like to attempt this question?
Yeah, I think I can say that there are many support was there for me when you talk about the non-binary and the binary, the other which we call heterosexual community. There was some support was there, but some of them, what they do is they start taking the ownership and start saying that we know what it means. It should be like this. They start dictating the terms, like everything of another community whatever the rules and regulation they have made or the social system they have made may not suit us equally well, so it may not suit us well. So we as a community need to know what to take, what not to take, what is required, what is not required for us when we are taking from another this thing. So that's what it is. But overall, like, love and affection should be there. So we are not so different from everyone. So it's only some aspects, our choices or our way of dealing life is different, but not everything. So we should have that love and affection. We maintain the respect as well with the other community and try to see how we can proceed. Of course, the decision will be ours.
Thanks, Vasu. I'm going to take the next question to Kannan. This is again from the audience questions. How do you tread the balance of bringing to the fore the stories authentically? I'm looking at, I'm assuming this is to do with translation. Would love to hear your thoughts. Thank you. This is from Jyotsana again. Jyotsana, I hope I'm getting you right. And whether, do you mean again translations when you talk about authenticity? Kannan, would you like to address that?
Yeah, so is it okay, so can I get some clarity on the question? It's not very clear to me.
How do you tread the balance of, I think, like maintaining authenticity when you, are translating work from one language to another? In fact, that is something,
Okay, so,
I mean, that is something which is a big issue when it comes to translations and editing. And so if you could talk a little bit about that as from the perspective of a publisher.
okay, so when it comes to publishing, how we approach this is that, of course, we would love to make sure that as much as less is lost in translation, and if also possible, gain as much as possible in the process of translation. So that would be our the ideal way to translate. But we, as a publisher, we as a publishing house, we do not tell the translator that you have to translate as per this school of thought. We know that there are different schools of thought when it comes to translations, and within a very rational framework, we allow for a lot of differences. Some of our translators would like to bring the translation from the other language into the existing aesthetics and idiom of Tamil. Others would prefer to extend the idiom and aesthetics of Tamil to go as near to the original work as possible. And there are different schools of thoughts between these two poles, and we allow some space for them to do this as far as possible. When it comes to direct translation, it is a little more easier to bring more authenticity to the voice. But when it comes to translating through third language, then it becomes more challenging. So in one instance, when we are doing from Turkish through English to Tamil, because there was no Turkish to Tamil translator, when luckily I had to go to Istanbul. I was invited about 10 years back. Then I made a connection with a research student in a particular university who was doing research on translations of that particular author that we were translating. And then I connected that student to my translator. And through the 3 or 4 books of the same author he maintained this contact, and they maintained this communication. And because certain things become sort of secularized when it comes through English. For example, a parda becomes a headscarf, but the difference is huge because it's a religious connotation to it, which is more accessible in Tamil than in English. So we try to negotiate this through those emails, try to get our translation closer to the Turkish culture and language. And so that kind of mediation is also possible to use not just a translation, but also a person more authentic in the original culture and work with them. So we have tried to do all this, with different languages. We have attempted different methodologies, and we try to, as far as possible, to bring the translation close to the original and make it more authentic whenever possible.
Yeah. So I think what she was saying, authentic in the sense of experience, I think you have addressed that already.
You want me
Cultural
to
and
add something
linguistic.
for that, Neeta? So I can add
Sure,
one bit
sure,
for
do
that.
that. Yeah,
See,
sure.
while translating actually, so we can manage with the grammar, we can manage with the vocabulary, but really the challenge we all face is the cultural difference, the one culture to another culture. I'll give you just an example so that might give you an idea. Like I had translated Into Thin Air by John Crocker from English to Kannada. So there, the thin air, the word thin air itself means like when you cross after 3,000 meters or 4,000 meters, the oxygen density becomes less, right? That is what is called thin air. But we in Karnataka, we have mountains, it's the Western Ghat mountain, which are hardly 6,000 feet. They're just 2,000 meters only. So we don't have that word itself in our culture, and people don't know anything about the thin air. So we had only option of describing it clearly, giving a separate reference about what is thin air and what is the danger associated with the thin air, and then move forward. So that's what we have done. And this kind of challenges will be there in any translation, especially more when it comes from the Europe to India. If it's between the Indian languages, things works very well. But if it's outside the India, if it's coming from Europe or America or Africa, so then we'll have more such challenges.
Thanks a lot, Vasu. And I think this really brings our session to a close. Although this dialogue could go on for another 2 hours, I think we could talk about so many things. And there are more questions coming in, which are, as people are getting more involved in the session. But thank you so much to our audience who's here listening to us. Thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you, Oscar, for hosting us. Christine, for always supporting a lot of activities in terms of, working with so closely with Indian publishers and translators. Kannan, for the immensely wonderful work you do. Thank you so much. And Vasu, just for being you, for being this strong voice. And thank you for being, and thank you to the team Belong, Long Night of Literature, and to all our friends here. I take your leave. Thanks a lot. Over to Yoshita. No, Lasya. Lasya, you're taking over.
Thank you, Neeta. Thanks to Publishers Exchange. Thank you, Oscar, Kannan, Vasudhendra, and Christine for being here. It was a great conversation to listen into. For the little I got to listen into it, I will go back and check it out again. Thankfully, we're archiving this. Really hope to see you all at the panels again, or working with you again.